nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.
Sorry about my dog. He just started wilding out all of a sudden. I don't know why, but I thank you all for your time. I love the horror genre and how it's able to communicate messages in a way that other films can't. It can give us essential learning without being too preachy, and can add some different nuances to really send the message home. Beginning with you, Adriana, for Lupita, she's at the core of leading this fight to save this beloved bingo hall. What do you think what is the quality within her that makes her most effective in kind of rallying the troops behind this cause?
The sense of community, the family, the community. And I really love Lupita learn that community is the people, not the world. This is beautiful in the movie. And I think this is the most wonderful thing for Lupita.
It's very touching, her ability to connect to people, even in the midst of all of these things that's going on. And gentrification is a real big topic. It's particularly important to me. I live in Inglewood, and I'm watching as the big stadium is now active here in our city, and just the city as a whole is changing. So it's very, very relatable, impactful for a lot of cities. Richard, for you, when you kind of represent the antagonist, I guess you could say, what is the scariest thing, do you think, about when big business moves in? Obviously, your character is cloaked with a fearful element too, but what is the scariest thing about the big guy moving in to a community?
Well, I agree with you about gentrification, and I live in a neighborhood in London that's changing all the time, and I've seen it in other cities I've lived in, and the big company. And what's so sad is, I would remember walking down the street, and there's all these local mom and pop shops, and you'd know everybody in it. You'd walk in and get your coffee, and the next thing you know, it's taken over. And I won't name any names, but another big corporation. And in fact, I can think of a street near where I live here that there's no more mom and pop shops anymore, and the sort of community has gone away, and it's really sad to see that, happening more and more. So I love that this film, it was one of the first things that struck me when I read the script, is how it addresses that, the changes that are happening and the effects it's having on the communities around. You see them break up and scatter as well, which is, it's really sad. It's important that we make note of it. And I'm fully on board with you that the best thing about horror is that, it can have a lot more to say than just scaring your pants.
Mm-hmm. Joshua, for you, for Caleb, again, with these horror connecting these messagings, when you finally had a chance to read through the whole story as you prepared yourself, what struck you most about this story, and how does horror compare to some of the other parts you've done throughout your career?
Well, horror is, they're all pretty similar. The only thing that I would say that is different about horror, same thing as what's different about comedy and drama, is that there's different timings for the things, and there's just a lot of different aspects that go into each different genre. But what I would say about Caleb, what I think about is, it could happen to anybody. What happened to Caleb? He lost his father to cancer, and it was super relatable for me because I lost a few family members to cancer before. And it was just really easy to see why he made the choices that he did, and to really put myself into his shoes.
What I've always loved about Blumhouse films is they've always been kind of on the cusp of telling different stories, unique stories, and bringing different filmmakers to the forefront. Adriana, for you, what impressed you most about this story?
Well, not only the script is beautiful, not only Blumhouse, Amazon Prime Video, Gigi Saul Guerrero, this Mexican young woman who is amazing director. I saw the movies of Gigi, other movies, and I really admire, because she's so young and she has a wonderful way to say that story that she wants to tell as a Mexican, as a Latin American, as a Latin ex, and for the whole movie. It's amazing for me. It was so wonderful for me that.
When I was speaking earlier to one of the other performers in one of the other films, she spoke of how her particular film motivated her to not just perform the art, but take that art back to the community that it's kind of shining. She's from a border town, and it spoke a lot to her experiences with that. For you, Richard, with this story of gentrification, you've spoken of how it's personally affected you in London. How has it also transformed you after being on the anti side of it?
Playing the bad guy in it all.
Yeah.
I think the one way this transformed me has made me really aware. I mean, I was always aware, but a lot more aware of the importance of keeping your community alive. And even to the extent of really just making sure you know the people around you, and that that you know your neighbors, and that that you help do what you can to keep a sense of working together as a community. And that's something I sort of gave more lip service to. And after doing this film, really thinking about it, really looking at my own neighborhood, it's definitely changed me. So, for sure, 100%. It was a really special film. And Gigi is an incredibly gifted writer and director. And, it's definitely done something to me working with her and working on this project.
Joshua, same question for you. At your age, you have a different view of the bridge, in that most of the things that you probably see around your own neighborhood are more modern, but you have grandparents and aunts and uncles who live in this, or I presume that live in different places. So how has this changed or informed you more about gentrification and the effects that it can have on a community?
I mean, in general, gentrification is a monster because it destroys communities, but it also destroys the history, the very rich history of communities, and what they've been through and how they've overcome different situations. And gentrification, for me personally, it kind of sucks because, yes, new things that do come into communities, because I'm a younger person, so I do love, when I see a new Chick-fil-A being built, I'm like, oh, that's super cool. But at the same time, you see local businesses that are going out of business. And it really sucks because I just feel like I wish that a Chick-fil-A can be built right next to a local business without taking away the local business's business. You know what I mean? And so it's just really bittersweet. But overall, gentrification it sucks in general.
Absolutely. Well, I thank all of you. This was a fabulous film, wonderfully performed by all of you. I enjoyed it so much. And the messaging was terrific because it wasn't like, just beating you over the head with it. It really eased you into it and really taught a lot. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeandra.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed this. My own family is from Louisiana.
Ooh. Ooh.
My own family is Creole.
Yes.
And so this was particularly meaningful to me because New Orleans and Louisiana culture is so steeped in spooky things. And this was a great vehicle for some very important messages. Asjha, beginning with you, Shawna goes on a tremendous journey of self-discovery, of self-esteem, of alliance and allyship to family, and just so many different messages. When you first read through the entire script, in your mind, did you have an idea of how you wanted to shape Shawna, or how did that process happen for you?
Honestly, when I first read the script, I wanted to cry because I saw a younger version of myself in her. All of the insecurities that she had, especially in relation to colorism, I've experienced. So that wasn't very far off for me. Honestly, I was just so happy that someone had written a script about this. And it's a testament to Sherman, and it's a testament to diversity behind the scenes, and that it's a Black man, because I feel like that's probably why I hadn't ever seeing this in a script is because it's like there's not that much diversity behind the scenes with like, you know, writers and directors. And so I was just so happy that this was a topic that we were going to be tackling. And yeah, that helped me shape her because it was pretty close to home. It wasn't too far of a stretch. I mean, the fighting vampires was pretty crazy, but yeah, her self-discovery, it just kind of unfolded in the paper. I like saw it, and it was kind of, I understood it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Louisiana is very steeped in those sort of traditions. It's been the subject of many films, but this film was beautiful and it felt different and it was informative. And again, even as someone with roots there, it still taught me a lot of things that I don't think of specifically about displacement. Mariette, when you began the road to bringing this film to life, how much of other Louisiana-based things do you examine to kind of shape your own ideas of bringing the film to life?
The best thing about bringing this to life was that our whole crew, we shot in New Orleans, obviously, but our whole crew was from New Orleans. And there are times where, you know, there's a specific scene when Shawna's sitting down with her father on the foundation of the house that used to be there. And I remember the whole neighborhood walking by and seeing this foundation and it really reminding them of what it was like to go through Katrina. I did most of my research and learning through the people and hearing their stories and how it meant so much to acknowledge what had happened from Katrina and how it affected the people today, and that people were still healing, you know, in such a major way. It's just decades and generations of trauma, not only from Katrina, but through from slavery. And, you know, even the mansion that we were shooting at, that used to be an old plantation. And some of the pictures that you'll see within the movie are actual pictures of what it used to look like. And so it was kind of really cathartic to experience it around us, to see how it affected people and how it affects, you know, our country. Because while we were shooting, it was during the pandemic, but also through the Black Lives Matter movement. And so it was kind of like an eruption of emotion that had been held down for so long. And for the first time, people could actually talk about it and show their pain. And through this movie, we're able to express that. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's just so many layers, not only the history of New Orleans, but what was happening politically in the world that we were able to express through this movie. And for that, I'm just so thankful to be a part of a project that means so much to so many people.
Mm-hmm. The timing of this, the landing of this is amazing in that I have family who is currently still displaced from the most recent hurricane.
Yes.
Who will see a lot in this. And with horror is a wonderful vehicle to kind of create all of these nuanced messages at once without it sounding too preachy, without it beating you overhead with the message. It just kind of eases you into the message because you're so not distracted, but you're so immersed in the horror quality of it and waiting for the for you. Why do you think acting that you've done in your career?
I am so sorry, you were breaking up. I wasn't able to hear the question.
No problem. When you take a role that's rooted in horror, how does this compare, your approach compared to other types of roles that you've done in your career?
The stakes are higher. In reality, I'm not having to like make it up in my mind. Like the circumstances that I'm given is literally life or death. Especially with like, you know, with my mom actually dying in this film, death is all around me at this point. And then I'm fighting vampires. And that's probably just the biggest difference. I've done things that are very, where I'm in high school and the biggest stakes are, am I going to get an F on this test? Like, you know, and so that's, so it's very different. It's very different. It required a lot of energy and I mean, a complete range of emotions dealing with everything that was happening in Shawna's life at the time. which was a lot. So yeah.
It's you're a wonderful performer, and just to see the range of emotion from the fear to the anger to the purpose to those wonderful teenage moments of liking a boy and trying to balance all of those things in a way that, say, teenagers don't have to do here in Los Angeles. We're not worried about hurricanes. If we have an earthquake, we have an earthquake. You know, we're not worried about those things, but these are constant worries for them as it comes every single season. Lastly, Mariette, for you, the fearful elements of this film are amazing. I watched it kind of late at night, so it had me a little sheepish. What is the anatomy and the key to making those moments, the balance between making them very scary but not cartoonish? Because it definitely didn't have like a cartoonish type of quality. It was really like a foreboding, like a real palpable thing.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I've done so much work into analyzing why a horror film is scary. I've watched them over and over, and like little scenes of like, how does tension work? And so I put a lot of energy and time into crafting that, storyboarding and shot listing, and creating that with my DP Sabelle. How would we do that within lighting, creating shadows and creating that tension. So, you know, there is a lot of work that goes into it beforehand. And then, you know, sometimes, you know, everything that you plan for doesn't completely come true, or it's just so much more difficult when we're shooting during pandemic with shorter hours and being able to achieve everything that you had put into planning. But that was probably one of the most fun things to kind of craft with my team and figure out how we can create that tension and deliver a scare.
Mm-hmm. Well, I truly enjoyed this film. All of these Blumhouse films were fantastic. This one in particular was close to my heart. I enjoyed it so much, with some wonderful messaging in the boot with the scare. So I like that. Thank you, ladies,
so much.
Thank you, ladies, for your time. This has been very enjoyable for me, and I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Barbara and Nicholas. This moved me very much, because I have a senior parent who is 86, who is in the home with me. And I have to remind myself about patience and really listening to what she's saying, especially when it pertains to medical issues and things like that. So this really resonated with me. And it made me a little sad, like, you know, I have to make sure I'm doing what needs to be done and listening to her truly. Barbara, beginning with you, Judith is communicating. Why do you think it is so difficult for younger family members to truly listen when our elders are speaking to them, particularly when they feel like something is harmful to them?
Well, because there's a lot of mental issues that do happen with some older people, like dementia and Alzheimer's and things that affect you mentally. And I don't know why, you know, that's the case in terms of individuals. It has to be an individual story. I dealt with a mother who had dementia, and what she was experiencing was totally real to her. And I was faced with the dilemma of whether to go along with her, even though I knew it wasn't the truth, or because not being believed was the biggest thing to her. Was the most painful aspect of what she was going through. And then we found drugs that helped her, and then the whole thing eased. But I know what you're talking about. There's like this, I think we have to presume innocence. And, you know, I think, like, I remember as a teenager when my parents stopped trusting me, and I thought, wow, they know me. How could they not trust me? I think the same thing is true as a parent gets older. You have to trust them. You have to trust that what they're telling you is true. If it's outrageous, then okay, then you have to deal with it, and, you know, on a case by case. But I would presume trust. I would presume that what they're telling you is the truth. As long as you can.
I will definitely, luckily we haven't got there yet, but I, you know, definitely sage wisdom for sure. Nicholas, for you, I love the way you and Barbara work together because, again, like I have a teenager who is very close to my mom as well. So I could see that relation to a working with Barbara. When you leaned into who Zack was and his relationship with Judith, what impressed you the most about him? And how did you begin to shape who he was and their relationship in your own mind?
Well, I have a similar experience with my grandmother, and similar to Judith, in just she's just so young and feisty and you know, just like truly just like a best friend. And I could really pull from that. And yeah, I mean, Barbara was so awesome to work with, and that was amazing, and it helped me so much to form that character. And yeah.
With that,
Well said.
I hear you. With this, the fear elements are very, very real, and it's some very scary things are going on at this house where Judith is living. This kind of senior living home where she's been placed by the family. I'm intrigued for you, Barbara, when we are seeing those extreme close-ups of the fearful things happening. What do you see in those moments when you're filming that? Because some of it is very, very intense and it's very scary. Are you seeing? Is there a person who's doing those things, who's the fearful element, as people will see?
Yeah, we were lucky. Axel, the director, very much wanted things to be practical on the set rather than no CGI or anything like that, which of course for actors is much better because you have something real to react to. And while it isn't the same degree of darkness that it is on the film, I can see, you know, and I know that it's an actor, but still it's something really powerful to react to. And every single little thing that can help me get to something real is appreciated by me. And I can't say it's the same kind of fearful intensity that there is in the film, but it helps me. And when your body gets into it, then things start happening to you, and you get riled up and stuff. And there are so many scenes where the heart was beating, and my hands are cold, and all these things are happening, which you're welcoming as an actor. So that's what it was like on the set. We were shooting on a practical location. This was a real house. And so it was really perfect because we all got to sense the place itself. I'm glad they called it the Manor, because it is a presence.
Mm-hmm. I was fearful for me too. I was watching this a little bit too late at night, and so my heart was too. Nicholas, for Zack, or for you as an actor doing some horror, how do you rank that in the other type of roles that you've done in your careers? What is the key to kind of invoking that horror and that for that being afraid? How do you invoke that for the audience?
It's hard. This was my first horror movie, and it's a hard genre, and I think really just being in the moment and being there and really just losing all of your surroundings. I think that's really the key to it. And having Barbara there, we were talking about the scene under the bed. It was just, I felt it, like everything went away. And there's a lot of moments like that when we're in the pantry and running down the halls, and we're really in that moment. And it's just totally losing it, like being in that moment as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Nicholas that if you can get to something real yourself, if it's really happening to you and you're really feeling it, then the audience will.
It's
if you're not acting anymore.
You can't in horror. I found that you can't really cheat in horror. Like a crying scene, you might if you're not there, you can use a tear stick or all these other things. Like horror, you really have to be there, and it won't translate well on film if you're not there. And there's so many moments like that. And I think that's what makes this movie so great.
This movie is fantastic. And Barbara, I've enjoyed you in many films over your career. You're a fabulous performer, and this film is no exception. How do you rank doing horror with some of the other things? I've seen romantic and all these other types of roles. How does horror rank into the resume for you?
Some people have a prejudice against horror, think it's a subculture, but I think it's kind of essential in a way. I think as human animals, we're built to have fear. I see that just said low power mode. Everything went away. Okay. To deal with fearful things is part of the caveman part of us. And I think horror lets us have a chance to experience them without really any fear, any damage to you personally, like riding a roller coaster or something. You can experience it, but you won't be hurt. So I think it's satisfying on that level. I don't like the blood and guts horror films. They're not my thing, but psychological horror, I'm fascinated with. But to me, I approach it like any role. I mean, is valid and in the same way. I'm always looking for really juicy roles, in which this was.
Mm-hmm. I love this. I love this so much. I'm a big horror buff. The two of you worked so well together, and I really, really felt like the bond between the two of you was very enjoyable, and fear rooted in reality is always an especially frightening thing. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. This is a wonderful project, and I enjoyed both of you immensely.
Thank you so much. Me too, you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ariana, for your time. This movie was already frightening to me, and I was watching it a little bit too late at night, but I love horror themed movies. But more importantly, I learned a great deal by the time I got to the end. And horror to me is best when it's rooted in some sort of reality, as this film is. When you agreed to sign on this role and you read the script, how much of the storyline were you aware of with women living in these migrant areas and trying to have families and babies? How much were you aware of this 1975 issue?
I'm aware of the present day issue that existed in the 70s that still exists to this day because I'm from a border town. So, farm work exploitation, I think, is still alive and well. This sort of unspoken reality where a lot of our farm workers are undocumented. So they're both essential, but their rights aren't, is extremely close to me. And I think that having to be part of this project, I mean, it added like a historical layer that maybe I didn't know so much about, as far as like Los Angeles and the sterilization with women there, but it didn't come as a surprise, unfortunately. I think that it was a great opportunity to finally share, and I'm so glad that you felt like you like learned something about this and had just like this reality check. And I it's not even really about wanting to like force people to like understand this is what happens, but it really is just exposing what already exists and then trying to hopefully get people, audience members, and those who like watch it to assume social responsibility in whatever form that looks like. It doesn't have to be political, but something like locally with your community, to really like work so that this doesn't happen again, and so that we improve like the rights of farm workers and immigrants here.
Absolutely. It was fascinating. It was so layered. Ultimate, there's the fear factor of the film. Also, there is the relations between your character, Diana, and her husband, and the nuances of being Latino and whether you are speaking the language, where you're not. So they're having that struggle within each other and the way other people see each other within the community. I mean, there were so many layers, but it was presented in a way that wasn't beating me over the head like I'm going to teach you something today, because you're wrapped up into the horror element of it because it's a Blumhouse film. When you first read this full script, you've already mentioned that you have your own attachment to it being from a border town, but looking at this horror element as a vehicle for communicating these messages, what impressed you the most about reading this character and how you would approach it?
Yeah, I mean, when I read the script, I thought it was like a Mexican Get Out. I mean, that's one of like my favorite movies where, like you said, there's this horror component that allows maybe this social message to kind of be more digestible, because we're so focused on the genre, the suspense. And it's not until after you've watched the whole movie, you're like, wow, that's fucked up. And the writing was amazing. When I first read it, I told my reps that I needed to be part of this project. And for me, like you also mentioned, the most nuanced aspect of these characters is really having the spectrum of identity as a Latino at the forefront, where you have one character who's Mexican who immigrated here. You have another character who is from here, but is a first, second generation Latino. And those experiences are very different. You know, if you ask someone outside of the community, they think we all the same. And then within the community, I mean, there's just so much diversity and variation that I think that was probably the most interesting thing for me reading the script.
Mm-hmm. During the course of our journey, we meet this beautiful couple. They have decided to relocate. The husband's found some work in this kind of picturesque-ish town, and they have this opportunity to build a new life with each other and with the community surrounding them. Do you find that, I know obviously you can't speak for all people, you definitely are not speaking for all Latinos, but do you think this is a common experience, not what we find out in the end of what the ultimate horror is, but just within them communicating with each other and the people around them? Do you think this is still a common experience within Latino groups of second generation or not speaking Spanish? Is it starting to level out that it's not such kind of disjointedness between each other? Because it made me very sad to see how your character was treated, your husband's character was embraced, and just all of those different things that are happening there.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's so layered. And I guess if the best way to explain it is it really is dependent on where you're at. So, for example, growing up in a border town, like everyone was Hispanic, like white people like assimilated to Latino culture, which is very interesting. You had most white people being able to speak Spanish. And then, you go outside of this shelter, this bubble, and you realize, okay, the world is very different. And the way that you perceive others and the way that people perceive you is very, very different than what you were accustomed to. So I think it does it's very like relative to your environment, right? I didn't even realize growing up this kind of, I don't know if it's disjointedness, but there is like a hierarchy of some sort within Latino like countries. And then I would say probably like in the 80s and 90s, like being a first, second, third generation was a lot better than being an immigrant in this country. And now I do think that there is more inclusiveness. Now there is more acceptance. And what's interesting is hyphenated Americans never before really had to face and come to terms with like how American, how much have I assimilated, and how Mexican, how much of my origins am I preserving until recently. That's something that I think because we've always just kind of been told like either I identify as being super Mexican because my family's super Mexican, or like I identify as being very American because I can't speak Spanish and like I'm very Americanized. And rather than having a Mexican who is they know their culture, you know, someone that is like white knowing their culture. You have these hyphenated Americans that have to kind of like find a space that blends both cultures, because I do think they impact a lot of first, second, nth generation Latinos.
Absolutely. What we listening to you speak of this, it reminds me, my family's from Louisiana, and it is a similar kind of small town feel where, you know, it's predominantly Black, but do you have white people assimilate into Black culture and they cook the same way and they live the same way? And then you step out of Boutique, Louisiana and go to, say, maybe New Orleans, and it's not so cosmopolitan, I guess you could say. And so there's a lot of relatability in that. Lastly, again, I enjoyed this. I learned a lot from it. It was so nuanced. It was so well written. And I got several messages at once without even realizing it and being educated, particularly how the antagonists are taking advantage or using the culture against you to further their own agenda. What were after you wrapped the film with this wonderful cast and crew, what were your thoughts that you left set with once it was all said and done?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think something I've like discussed a lot with filmmakers, with other actors, is representation, in my opinion, is just scratching the surface. Like, that is the very beginning of, I don't want to say like social or political work, because it doesn't have to be in that realm. It's so fucked up. Like, I don't even truly, like, I'm not here to like preach to anybody, but if there is something that is important to you, like storytelling, it should be equally as important to ensure that you are involved in your local community, to ensure that you, if you have the means to, can donate or can start an organization to help with causes that better said community that you just wrote a story about, that you just, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think getting the conversation going is just the very beginning. And when I finished this project, immediately, you know, I went back home. I'm still in Texas now, but I'm in Houston, and I have made the trek back home, which is 5 hours, to be part of this like leadership program locally in McAllen, where I get to meet with a lot of the leaders in different industries locally, whether it's in school boards or if it's our police force, whether it's our local politicians. I mean, I think however you want to contribute to your community, if there's something that you want changed, you have to be active in it. So I've tried to kind of like keep that moving forward, because it doesn't just stop at telling a good story.
I love that. Bless you. This was such a great film. And I hope lots of people watch it and really absorb it. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Better shake your booties for Black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for Black girl nerves.